Lazerboy, what is the secret of your powers?
Welcome to the Lazerboy podcast, episode 20. We're just going to be talking about season 3 of Hannibal. This is part 2 of a two-part podcast. Wherein last time, Dat and I discussed seasons 1 and 2 of Hannibal. So let's get right into it. I am your host, the Lazerboy, and I am joined by my co-host, Dat and Win. How you doing, Dat?
I'm doing quite well, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, really excited to talk about season 3 because I didn't know how to structure the last episode, and I just talked about season 1 for a really long time. I forgot how much stuff happens in one season. So, and we kind of rushed through season 2 as well because I thought we were going to talk about the entire series in one episode. So, this will give us a good chance to dissect it a little bit more thoroughly, right?
Yeah, and then also provide like kind of our final thoughts, just as far as the this series in its entirety.
Yeah. So cool. Since you kind of know what to expect now from seasons 1 and 2, going into season 3, which I'm sure you probably just watched like the next day or something, whereas I had to wait like a year and a half for it. What were your expectations of season 3?
Pretty high. I mean, I think we talked about how excellent season 2 was, how it really did represent essentially the pinnacle of of the series, and so I came in quite high expectations, but I also knew this is kind of they're in foreign territory now. I mean, actually, literally and figuratively, and so I didn't quite know how they were going to wrap things up, and exactly. I knew it was the last season, so I wasn't coming in thinking, "Oh, we're gonna keep going," and as if like there was I didn't know anything about the production and how, if it had to end and if it ended abruptly. I didn't do much research on like on the overall impression that people had, or like or even if it was a favorite. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of there's a lot of series out there that don't end so well, or the last season is controversial in terms of likes and dislikes, and so or love hate type of scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just expected that there was be some kind of conclusion for the characters, but that you just hope, you cross your fingers that it's going to be compelling and complete and interesting. But that's a daunting feat now. Now what we know about great series and just how sticking the landing is really difficult.
Right. So, okay, yeah, you had high expectations for it. I mean, I was in the same boat. Again, we have different experiences because, I watched it as it aired, and knowing that, every season, it seemed like, for me, I was on pins and needles at the end of the season because I didn't know whether it was going to get picked up or not. It always had, like, kind of middling ratings. It was a very niche kind of show, obviously. And back then, they were still going by like ratings, like real time ratings on NBC, and they didn't really count. I'm sure they counted like DVR numbers, but the NBC did not have a streaming service yet, so it was a very different picture back then than it is today, right? With all of our streaming services and Netflix and what have you. That in and of itself, like season 3 for me was highly anticipated. When they announced that it had been picked up, and I believe they even said that it could be the final season. I'm not sure about that, but I'm glad that they ended on their own terms. And if anything, Brian Fuller, the showrunner, and he's the showrunner and the lead writer of the show. If anything, like he knew, like they're pushing the envelope every season, so like every season finale was almost to him like a series finale, you know what I mean? So he didn't know what was going to happen with the show, and he ended it on his own terms, which is great. And season 3, like you said, is in foreign territory, like they're in Italy. But as a book reader, because in between seasons I read the books, and mainly Red Dragon and Hannibal. So season 3 really follows closely with the novel Hannibal. the first 7 episodes, and then the latter half of the seasons, obviously, is the adaptation of the Red Dragon. So I really thought that was a great way to structure the season, and I was highly looking forward to it. And it did not let me down. I watched it, like every episode, like with great fervor and anticipation. Like I made, it was almost like religious for me. Like I was, okay, so they shifted it to Friday, which is where TV shows go to die. You know that they're going to be canceled if they're if they move it to Fridays, right? So like every Friday night, I knew I played it on the TV channel with commercials and everything, and then I just like dissected every episode. And so season 3 for me was big on my list, but not as great as season 2. And we'll get into more specific details there.
Allegro mi sembrava amore, tenendomi il cuore in mano. E nelle braccia avea Madonna involta in un drappo tormento. Dante's first sonnet. It fascinated Cavalcanti's the eating of the heart is a powerful image.
Where is he? You let him go.
I've killed hardly anybody during our residence.
You are going to be called. It has already been set into motion. There is only one way you will forgive Will Graham.
I have to eat him.
But what did you think of the first 7 episodes? We'll go from there. We'll just talk about the first half of the season and then the second half, where upon it takes place largely in Italy, correct?
Yeah. I mean, tonally, well, it was kind of jarring, I think, in how it shifted over to the Red Dragon plot, because I didn't expect it. So I came in completely blind, not having read anything, only really having the 2 previous seasons to go off of, and so I would say that maybe I wasn't 100% buying into the beginning, the first couple of episodes, them being in Italy, really establishing his life with the Gillian Anderson character of Bedelia.
Yeah.
And then also introducing like his sister, and then was it a Lecter Castle? And so I was like, okay, this is interesting, but I didn't know where they were gonna go with this. And I guess that it makes you think more, because at one point, on one side it's comforting knowing that it's the last season, so there's a confidence knowing that, okay, they're not dragging it and that it's going to be conclusive, right? So it's not as pins and needles, kind of scenario that you were feeling, whether are they going to get another season, or are we going to see any more episodes? I felt it felt good knowing, okay, they got the 3 seasons, and then they know what they're doing, and then they're not going to drag it out. So the quality hopefully would not drop. So beginning of season 3 was, more or less good writing, good stuff, but then it was like, okay, how are they setting this up? So that just kind of had me scratching my head until it kind of shifted into that whole. Then I felt like I was watching. It was almost ending one season inconclusively and then starting a new season, because the I was familiar with the Red Dragon movie, so as soon as this character came on, it was like, okay, this is a whole another thing, that normally you would begin introduce maybe at the very beginning of the season, episodes 1 or 2. I don't know when he got brought in, but it felt later. Felt like right in the middle. I don't know if it's like, it could have been 4, it could have been 5, 6.
You're talking about the Red Dragon?
What's that?
The Red Dragon you're talking about when he came in?
Yeah,
it was episode 8. The first 7 episodes were the capture of Hannibal, and then the last 6 episodes. It's 13 episodes total, and then the last 6 episodes are a direct adaptation of the Red Dragon. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I have the episode list right here in front of me too. So
yeah, there was like kind of a mini conclusion, with the capture of him, and then it's like, okay, where are they gonna go after this? But then it fit together, because I didn't know what direction they were doing. Then it was like actually kind of very creative and very almost brilliant that you would naturally then have him in that scenario where you can then create the last. So like, in a way, you're right. If it's 13 episodes, 7 and 6 would be almost the best way you can split it.
Sure.
Right, in terms of down the middle, or closest down the middle being an odd number. So I liked it. It picked up a lot for me then, because then it was like, okay, you have all the characters in a foreign situation, and the tone feels different, right? The settings and everything is new, and you normally have to kind of it's almost like putting on new clothes. You're gonna have to kind of break it in a little bit. You're not quite sure of what the tone feels like, what the texture feels like, and you gotta get in a couple episodes. And 1 and 2 already did that, so I think that's why 2 stuck more, because you're deeper into this world. They introduced you a world and the way it looks in terms of the scale and lighting and everything, and then they took you out of that world in 3. So it was kind of like having putting on the foreign clothes or whatnot. So yeah, like it felt like a two-parter for me, and how it interpreted the whole Red Dragon story, I thought was excellent.
We'll get to the Red Dragon in a bit. Let's talk about
Yeah.
the first 7 episodes first.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to remember when I watched. Okay, so episode 1, Antipasto. First 7 episodes of season 3 are going by the Italian names for, I guess, dishes, whereas season 1 was French and season 2 was Japanese. So I really like that they're continuing this theme. So episode 1, Antipasto, was pretty much Hannibal-centric episode, and for me, it aired in June 4th, 2015. Just remembering it, like watching it, all the anticipation, and then I was like, usually in a season premiere, you catch up with all of your main characters, right? So you're like, especially at the end of the cliffhanger of season 2, where everyone was like left in limbo, like did they die or where did some of them survive?
Yeah.
I was like, I wanted to check in with all of our characters, like, hey, what happened? And then the whole episode was a complete like cock tease, and it was just Hannibal centric, him in Italy with Bedelia, him taking on this new life as a new life as a well, he took somebody's identity, right? And he's living in a false identity, and he's kind of almost like a scholar, where he's mingling with all these like Italian scholars, and I forget what kind of art that they're talking about in particular, but it wasn't until season 2 where we finally see what happens with everyone, right? Episode 2, Primavera, where we see Will Graham waking up in the hospital, and everyone seems to be alive. We check in with Abigail Hobbs seems to be alive. Jack Crawford, Alana Bloom, everyone's like alive. I think we see Jack Crawford and Alana Bloom a little later, but in this episode is episode 2 is Will Graham and Abigail Hobbs, and he's looking for Hannibal Lecter, right? He's in Italy, and we meet Ronaldo Pazzi, right? The Questura lead detective, and he's investigating another tableau that seems to be of Hannibal's working. And season 2, I keep saying season. Episode 2 is interesting because, we think Abigail Hobbs is alive, and it's just obviously a figment of Will's imagination, right? So Abigail Hobbs didn't make it out. But yeah, for the most part, I think the first half of season 3 for me was, yes, like you said, jarring, and it felt like like an art house foreign film, right? Especially because of the setting, and everyone's just it feels like also like Brian Fuller's like, I'm gonna go all the way with this kind of like dreamscape David Lynch nightmarish world, and he's going like full force with it this time. It feels completely more dreamlike and surreal. Do you agree with that, or?
Yeah. I mean, like with that sudden, setting change, it felt like there's times I felt like it was like Transylvania or something like that. Very gothic, very dark, very not domesticated, very exotic.
Yeah.
And I think he was going for that. I mean, everything feels very intentional to me. Starting, like you said, starting with the first episode, not giving you the benefit of catching up with all the characters. Kind of still leaving you in limbo. After all that time. And then the jarring setting change, but it's a good point that you brought that up. Maybe he's indulging a little bit. Maybe he wants to explore. He wants to expand the canvas and not just do a retread of what we saw in the previous 2 seasons, which really did maybe fully take advantage of that. His house and at the FBI agency and all that. So maybe he felt okay, like kind of new set of clothes, like I was saying. And yeah, it was it had a gothic kind of like almost like as if he was a new villain in a new place, like Bond, like James Bond. Now we're going on international grounds, and and then like the castles, kind of the castle, and almost everything being really, really dark. I think the show already is kind of bathed in darkness and shadows, but just even further. And so in some of it, I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's interesting. It's still well done. I didn't think it was like forced, but it was bold. And and then ultimately though, it's jarring because it's taking you, out of such familiar ground.
Yeah, it almost seems like, first season he's tried to have his cake and I'm talking about Brian Fuller here. He's trying to have his cake and eat it too, whereas, obviously he wanted to stay close to the source material and have his own kind of hypnotic, nightmarish vision. Like I said, I keep mentioning the David Lynch comparison, and he was also trying to appeal to a larger audience, by making it a procedural, and largely a lot of season 2 had a lot of procedural elements as well. But in season 3, it's completely jettisoned that procedural structure, and it's just completely soaked into this setting, these characters, and it's almost like the shackles were off, right? It was like, oh, I'm free now. This is gonna be my last season. I'm gonna do whatever I want. So it felt very liberating, felt very freeing to watch that, especially how close he is with this material, but a lot of the first 7 episodes to me feels there's a lot of slow burn, yeah, sure, but it felt a little unfocused. Not unfocused, but you know what I mean? It just felt like it didn't flow that well.
Yeah, not cohesive.
Yeah. But it just felt like they're stretching periods out, like, like you said, like when Will Graham visits Chio, the Japanese. It wasn't his sister. It was like his handler or somebody close to the family. His Hannibal's sister is passed away. I believe
that's right.
He ate a piece of her or something.
That's right. Mm.
And of course, when like Will comes to visit Chio, like she's still dealing with the aftermath of what Hannibal's mind game was that he played with their. I worded that really strangely, but yeah, you could tell that he messes with everyone he comes in contact with, right? And he he plays with their heads, plays a lot of mind games, and she's still dealing with that, which is kind of crazy. And she's still like loyal to him, after all this time, which is kind of fascinating. Mason Verger's still alive, which is crazy. Played by Joe Anderson this time because I guess what's his name?
Michael Pitt?
Yeah, Michael Pitt wasn't on board with all that makeup and or something like that. And Frederick Chilton's still alive, which is the first we saw of him since he got shot in the face. Another interesting character, Dr. Cordell, played by Glenn Fleischler, the guy that was in True Detective, the villain from that, right?
He's caretaker, right?
Yeah, the caretaker.
Yeah.
Who likes to cook as well and makes dishes. I guess Mason Verger wants to capture him and eat him or something, right? Something to that effect. And yeah, so the whole 7 episodes is like a cat and mouse game. Potsy's trying to capture him. Will Graham's trying to capture him. And the other thing that I think that's really different too is that like Jack Crawford and Will Graham aren't really operating within the bounds of law anymore, right? They're just like going rogue and they just want to catch him by any means necessary, right? So that's another way it feels different, don't you think?
Yeah. As you're bringing it up, I mean, some of the choices were interesting, but were good ones. Like I didn't know about the whole. I knew they switched actors. You know, I was, much to my dismay because I like Michael Pitt.
Yeah.
But it kind of made sense because he'd be so disfigured anyway that
Yeah.
he might look like somebody else. Like
Sure.
they would have to piece his face back together.
Yeah.
And the new actor, he basically channeled that same spirit, that
Yeah,
same
yeah.
sort of
He's doing a Michael Pitt
hammy-ish,
impression.
kind of over the top. Yeah, that
Yeah.
whiny voice. But it was done. I almost liked it better. Yeah, I almost felt this actor played it more naturally than Pitt did. But also there was that almost reinterpretation of the Alana Bloom character. Like her personality was different. The way she dressed differently. I mean, obviously she was kind of now
definitely
on a vengeful path.
metamorphosized, right, into like something. You know, she's been through so much through Hannibal. I mean, she slept with Hannibal, so of course
Yeah.
she's gonna change from that. And of course she almost died by the hands of Hannibal by proxy from
Mhm.
Abigail Hobbs, but still, like Hannibal tried to kill her as well. So it's interesting that she's been through all this trauma, but she decided to take control of it, right? And she's sleeping with the verger. I forgot her name. Margot.
Yeah.
Margot. Yeah.
That was a good. Yeah, that was a good move. I like that. I like that she, formed this dalliance with Margot's character, and that she would be utilizing Verger's resources because she also wanted revenge. So, it made sense that they would share that agenda, and that she would try to, align herself. So her character changed a little bit with that too.
Mm-hmm.
But to great effect though, to good effect. Like it
Yeah,
would
yeah,
make
yeah.
it wasn't such a stretch.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think they could still play her old character anymore. She, there's not much use for her to be in this new world, this new new agenda, this new plot. With everything kind of being expanded. But it felt good to then be back in the world that they established with Jack and Will's character. Like that, once we focus back on the hunt again for Hannibal, that that put us. I think it helped recenter things and refocus the plot again to kind of be able to adjust to these big changes, acting changes, personality type changes, setting changes. But once they I think by maybe episode 4 or 5, the focus, became clear again. And then I think maybe a testament to how well written the characters are, that the new settings and everything would be a little jarring, but we know these characters well enough, and they're so 3-dimensional that seeing them again and putting them in that situation would bring you back to what feels familiar, like that they themselves are still on their arc isn't complete yet, right? And so once the story kind of shifts back to their intent and their goal, the season and the show again started coming together again really quickly for me.
Mm-hmm. So we're skipping ahead a little because I don't want to go episode by episode, but in episode 5, Contorto was a great ending for me because it's like Jack Crawford finally gets like his vengeance, right? And he is following Potsy. Potsy, at this point, we know that he's working with Mason Verger. He's in his pocket, so he wants to capture Hannibal Lecter alive to bring him back to Mason Verger. And Potsy, of course, he is no match. He's oh my god, he has like so many tells, and he's just like so scared in his presence. Like there's no way this guy's gonna capture Hannibal Lecter, and of course he doesn't. He's trying to get like a blood sample from him or something, or his prints, and of course that fails. And Potsy is, I love how they're like, he's like, are you Ronaldo Potsy of the Potsy, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell it's very, like they've done their research on history of Italian history and stuff like that. And Crawford, I love this scene when Crawford is eating at the Potsy house with Potsy's wife or girlfriend, and they're talking about pappardelle. And he's telling him how to pronounce it. He's like, no, it's pappardelle. Pappardelle. I don't know. Stuff like that is very fascinating to me. I love scenes like that. I don't know why that always stood out to me, but it was an interesting episode because Jack Crawford finally gets his due. He pretty much was beaten in the fight with Hannibal in the season finale of season 2. He's dying, holding that shard of glass in his neck. So he finally, one ups Hannibal Lecter in fight to the death, but Hannibal leaves alive. He escapes via the rope that he he hung Potsy with, right? So that was an interesting escape. That was a good fight too. I like how empowering that felt for Jack. You know, it was like, yes, he finally, you know, got him back. And we always knew that Jack, you know, could hold his own in a fight. So what do you think of the fight and what happened in this episode?
Yeah, it was a pretty good bit of fan service. I mean, again, you know, we're trying to see these characters' arc come to full circle, and but you know, we saw that like he'd beaten him, but then it was frustrating, you know, to see him let him go, kind of, or you know, to see him escaping, but then it didn't seem, you know, appropriate for like him to end him there, or even to arrest him there, you know, because we know this is really Will's story, and that arc is more important than seeing Jack's arc. So, you know, just that kind of that the war is not over, but a very very crucial battle was won. Was very very rewarding and well done. You know, just another really great or choreographed brutal physical fight that they did in the museum. Like I like that. I like how it was staged and everything. I like
with
that.
With the soundtrack,
Jack
the music
made the adjustments he needed.
Too.
You know, he was fueled by revenge and vengeance and coming, you know, across the pond to enact that revenge. But later on, you know, we hear him say that. I forgot his line, but you know, he just knew that he wasn't going to end it this way. Like it was more fitting that Will would be the one to, you know, try to take him in.
Yeah, and it's great that Jack's been through a lot. You know, his wife Bella just passed, and she originally wanted to take her own life, but Hannibal wouldn't let her. And then, you know, he's bringing his ashes over to Italy to spread them where he first met Bella. So a lot of stuff is happening with Jack. It's very poignant, his arc in Italy. So I really like that. But that sets up the final 2 episodes of the first half of season 3, and I think these 2 episodes are fantastic. Dolce and Digestivo, episodes 6 and 7. Episode 6, you know, Hannibal is escaping with his life. You know, he's bleeding from the wounds the licks that he took from Jack Crawford. He's walking through, you know, Florence all bloody, which is a great shot. And he's coming to pack his bags, you know, he's coming, and we think, we forgot to mention this, but the relationship with Dr. Du Maurier, like, is she in on it? She's a passive observer, but she's pretty much complacent, right? No, what's the word I'm looking for?
Complicit?
Complicit, thank you. She's complicit in all the crimes, right? Because she's not doing anything about it. She's not participating, but she's observing, and she's not doing anything about it. So I don't know. What do you think of their relationship?
But I did think that it was a little bit of the Stockholm syndrome scenario.
Okay, right.
You know, knowing that like she's gonna be, you know, she's overpowered by him both physically and psychologically, intellectually, and so there's a little bit of, you know, her sympathizing, also even siding with him, but again, maybe because of the Stockholm syndrome, she's essentially somewhat being forced, or maybe we assume she could be being forced, but then like she's not, you know, she's enjoying the finest dining, finest wines, well, not avoiding the meat, obviously,
right?
But I mean, she's in the lap of luxury in terms of lifestyle, so there's that too, you know.
At one point, wasn't she aware that she was like, she's eating escargot or snails or whatever, and she was like reading, and she mentions too that like, isn't this is what you eat if you're trying to make the human meat better, right? So he's basically like serving her up like for later, and then obviously he has to go now, and then she's not ready, so she gets a pass, right? She gets to escape before Hannibal gets to eat her. And then I remember I think it's one of these final episodes of the first half, but he says like Hannibal comes to the realization that he needs to eat Will Graham, right? So that was a cool ending at the end of the episode. He's like, I have to eat him, something like that, right? And then so Will arrives in Florence, and yeah, they finally are reunited, right? At a museum, and it's a very interesting conversation. They're just like, you've been living in my mind for the past however long they've been apart from each other, and it's almost like two lovers like reunited when they're talking in the museum, right? So all this stuff goes down. Chio ends up shooting Will before he gets to, because I guess he wants to kill Hannibal, right? But Chio shoots him with a sniper rifle, and this is where Lecter takes Will to Jack Crawford, and they're all about to dine before it's revealed that Lecter is about to cut open his head and eat his brain. He literally wants to get inside his head, so and that's another callback to the film where he eats the Ray Liotta's character's brains. So I thought that was actually going to go down when I saw that episode. I was like, oh no, they're not going to eat a piece of Will's brain, are they? Thankfully they didn't, because it got cut short, and Mason Verger's cronies got to them before that to bring them back to Virginia. I forget where the Verger estate is, but yeah, back to the States pretty much, right? So that sets up Digestivo, where all this stuff goes down. It's Hannibal and Will need to escape, right? And they're pretty much held captive by the Verger estate. Yeah, a lot happened in Digestivo, right? Alana and Margot get their final arcs with regards to Mason, right? And Cordell, I love Cordell's line when he's like, I'm about to cut open your face without anesthesia. It's like, he says it like so matter-of-factly. It's so dark.
Oh, that's right.
So darkly humorous.
That was when he wanted to wear Will's face.
That's, yes.
To eat Hannibal, right?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, right. No. Because
Yeah.
Mason Verger needs a new face, right? Yeah. So
No, he just wanted to wear Will's face as he's eating Hannibal.
Oh,
Like,
did
that
he?
was-
Okay, I thought he needed like a
Yeah.
transplant or something. Okay.
Oh, no. I think he was just going to wear like a mask. Like, literally just indulge himself.
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And,
Okay.
and that's the sort of morbid, humor that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
That, that kind of stuff finally came back to the
It's
forefront.
right up
and,
your alley,
you know,
that dark sense of humor.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the Verger
right.
character is essentially representative of all that kind of, despicable behavior.
Yeah.
Unrefined. He essentially is Hannibal, but an unrefined version.
Yeah. So before that, Will Graham, it looks like it's gonna be his demise, but then Alana and Margot free Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal said something like he promises to look after Will, and he comes to save him. Pretty much kills Cordell, and then we find out later that they cut off Cordell's face and puts it on Mason's, which is a nice little poetic justice there. And then Alana and Margot murder Mason, right? Stick his head into that eel tank, which is very, it's just a fascinating visual metaphor, right? Like the eel looks very like phallic and it represents almost like I'm reading this here that they wanted to acquire some kind of sperm, Alana and Margot, and then I don't know, that eel looks very like sperm like as well. So yeah, it's a very cool visual cue there. And
It's
Hannibal,
a great way, just an interesting way to see a character die too.
Right.
His face eaten off. Oh no, I think it went through his mouth.
Yeah,
right?
it went
I
in
think
his
it went
mouth,
into
yeah.
his throat and
again,
choked
very
him to
sexual,
death.
right? It's like
Yeah.
very phallic. That eel penetrates the mouth of Mason Verger by the hands of two women. So I guess I think that was by design as well. Um, Lecter reveals to Chio that he ate but did not kill Misha. Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. So this is where Will recovers and has one last therapy session with Dr. Lecter, and he pretty much like breaks up with him at this point. He reveals that he no longer wishes to have any contact or thoughts about Lecter, and you can tell like Hannibal's pretty hurt by this. This whole time, they've been thinking of each other, and they've forgiven each other, and essentially that motivates Hannibal to give himself up, right, into the hands of FBI custody as Crawford arrives at Wolf Trap, Virginia, into Will's home and takes him away. And I think one of his final words to Will Graham is like, "I did this so you can always know where I am," something to that effect, right? So that was an interesting way to have Hannibal caught. What'd you think of this manner of him being caught like this?
Well, yeah, it was it when Jack arrived to the scene to get him? I think Hannibal said something like, "Oh, the great Jack Crawford has captured, Hannibal," and he's like, "I didn't capture you," and like, "You surrendered."
Yeah.
And that was critical because I felt that, well, like you said, I do agree. Like it felt like a breakup scene, and I felt him that was maybe his last go, right, to like rekindle that relationship so they can go off on their adventure together. Like he doesn't have Bedelia anymore. He's back in the States where he's wanted, and he's not going to have much freedom because he's going to be a hunted man. So maybe with him and Will going off, I don't know, this time to South America or something like that, he could kind of start anew again. But once Will rejected him, he was like, "Well, there's no reason for me to go on.
Yeah.
Being a hunted guy, I'd rather write books and be infamous now,
Mm-hmm.
and also still have the access and plus he's a smart guy. He knows even behind bars he could still be pulling strings and doing stuff. So
Yeah.
I think felt like maybe it was like his retirement plan. Like I'm just too undignified to be on the run,
Mm-hmm.
being chased like a dog. And I can't go back to Italy, and I can't. He probably can't leave. I don't think. I'm sure he could find a way, but maybe he's just at this point he's like thrown in the towel.
Yeah.
And that's why he gave himself up rather than being taken, really being captured, because he was already wounded, because Jack already had a chance to get him, and so he kind of knew he's sort of at the end of his options here. So it's kind of like a calculated move to go ahead and surrender, and then essentially continue the game, but have the notoriety and whatnot. But I like how later on they did talk about, oh, it's been 3 years, I think, since he's been in prison, and that his the press has kind of moved on from him now.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that right now. So the second half of season 3 coming up, the Great Red Dragon. Yeah, when I heard that, I was like, yes, we're getting into the final half. I was sad at the same time, but I was like, yes. I'm really anticipating how they're going to adapt this famous, novel, and this famous adapted twice in the movie. So, like you said, 3 years later. But going back to that real quick, I think it's quite fitting that Hannibal gives himself up, because that's really the only way he's going to get captured. He's too smart for everyone else. I think Crawford called him like an intelligent psychopath, so it's absolutely fitting that he is captured by himself, pretty much. So, The Great Red Dragon, episode 8. 3 years later, great introduction. We see Francis Dollarhide. A great wordless, like, cold open as well. Him just, like, sitting in a cafeteria, reading Time magazine, seeing, like, the Great Red Dragon painting, seeing him, isolated, alienated, what have you, from his co-workers and his peers. And I what'd you think of the introduction of Francis Dollarhide?
it was a slow burn. I wasn't quite knowing what they were gonna do, but I liked it. I liked the fact that it was compelling, and again, new. Like we're on new territory here, a new character, the focus being almost all on him, and it's his own story now, right? So like now the focus is basically, this is Francis Dollarhide's story, and then now we're just gonna bring in our characters again, as him being the nucleus or like the center of gravity, and everyone else getting caught into it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, it was a nice slow build from him being like silent. I almost thought he might not even say anything.
Yeah, he thought it was
and yeah, I wasn't familiar with the actor. I wasn't really sure how he was gonna play it, but I've seen the character play before. So they you can tell they just put a lot of thought, a lot of time into introducing him the right way. Maybe it's, like you said, very close, maybe true to the source material. Now they have the luxury of six episodes to help play this specific story out, and so yeah, it was very very thrilling. Then now it felt like I'm back. I'm watching a thriller now, like Seven or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's back to the basics, back to the our it's not really exactly procedural, but back to like the crime thriller genre that we're so familiar with from the past 2 seasons. But yeah, this is great. We're checking in with everyone. Obviously, Hannibal's in the criminally insane facility, and it's great that we see Chilton like put his feet up on the desk. And we're like, oh, he's still there. But then Alana comes in and he's like, get out of my desk, Chilton. And so we find out that Alana's running things now. So that was a pretty cool reveal. And Chilton is having dinner with Lecter. And I think this is the scene where he says something along the lines of, we have this new killer. He's talking about the Tooth Fairy. And I think Lecter calls him like, he's a very shy boy or something like that. And Chilton is just so condescending. He's just like, our boy here has got massive worldwide appeal. He's killing families, whereas you were more niche. And I think that's a great meta commentary too, because it's like Hannibal the series is very niche. You know what I mean? And now we're getting into more of like grounded, like more mass appeal energy with the Tooth Fairy. So that was such a fascinating.
So it was kind of like a meta moment, like a Deadpool meta moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't see that at all. Like, but yeah, that's an interesting one.
And then we see Will Graham. He has a new wife, Molly, and she has an 11-year-old son. They're living together in Wolf Trap, Virginia, having a nice little life, right? And it's almost like Avengers Endgame, right? Where when Tony gets like a second chance, and then sorry, mild spoilers for Avengers there, but and then Cap and Black Widow come and take him back or ask for his help, and then that's exactly what Crawford comes to do, right? He's like, we need his help. He's the only guy that can catch this guy.
At the same time, like how Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark's character, it was like, yeah, they're happy with this life, but they want that action, They want an excuse to play again. Like, they're just waiting. They're almost just waiting. Like, there's always going to be something. And plus, there's, again, his arc is incomplete. His life isn't, how do I play it out? Like, there's still it's unresolved still. His situation with Hannibal, his situation with his career.
Yeah, it's
incomplete.
And again,
it was like he knew the calling was going to happen. It was just a matter of time.
But it's interesting how Jack Crawford gets him, because he appeals to Molly. He pretty much guilts Molly into it, and he knew that that's the only way that Man, Jack Crawford is diabolical too, if you think about it, because like, wow, the way he just pulled those strings, right, to get Will Graham on board was kind of deceptive.
Well, if you get the wife on board, you can get the man on board, right? Because then she'd be the first and last defense of discouraging him. So, but it was a good move because she was
Yeah.
on board. She knew him. She knew where he came from, and I guess as a supportive wife, she knew that just like and again, just like Gwyneth Paltrow's character, Piper Potts, she was like, I know you gotta, I know you're not gonna be able to sleep at night unless you
Yeah.
go take care of it. Like it's just
Right.
one of those things where it's gonna eat at you until you you answer the call.
But yeah, we always make that comparison, but it's a little different here because Will Graham, has crossed that line of darkness, right? He's what Jack Crawford sent him to almost like a mental breakdown. So it's like it sets up these stakes of like, does he really want to go through that again? Is he gonna put him through that again? I know, like he's gonna watch over him, but like he's a very empathetic mind, and he's never gonna come back. He even says it to Molly, right? He said, "I'm gonna come back, but I'm not gonna be the same person," right? He says something like that. So Will Graham even knows it.
I think it's kind of a convenient plot device now. You're given that second chance, and then you have something to lose, right? If you go back in again, now the stakes are higher because you got a family now, and
right.
you don't want to lose that. You have a life. You
Uh-huh.
were given a second chance, and so it raises stakes and makes it more compelling. Rather than he's just alone at home drinking, and then he gets called. That's doing him a favor, to save him from himself. But I think in movies, giving the fallen hero or the retired hero, that second call, I think it's a well utilized type of what do we call, what do you call him, a MacGuffin? Is that, would you say that's a
MacGuffin?
a MacGuffin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that's appropriate to use in this situation?
What's a MacGuffin?
Oh, the fact that you're kind of given a family, and then you get the call again, to just advance the plot.
Yeah, I think I always thought a MacGuffin was something physical that you had to chase, but
Okay.
it's something. It's definitely a plot device for sure.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Dollarhide and his murders. Yeah, he's killing families, seemingly at random, because the FBI is pretty confounded. They're like, one takes place in another state, one takes place somewhere here, and they're just like, there's no pattern. But we all know that he's kind of, the tableau is very fascinating, right? He's like almost lovingly embracing them afterwards, especially the women. He's trying to see through their eyes, kind of thing. But yeah, what do you think of every time Will Graham goes through the crime scene again, and you see that like the zoom, zoom, and then when he finally gets back to it, we're almost like, yeah, Will Graham's back at it again,
Yeah. It was like,
back.
before it was a scary, eerie, it was like a pendulum or something, right?
Yeah.
But then when you see it again, yeah, you're right. Like, I thought that was effective. They took you out of it for a while, where you almost kind of missed it, right? Because the first episode, we're like, oh, we're in the different territory. But then, I always felt it was like his superpower.
Yeah.
Like, when he gets into that mode, it's almost like Professor X putting on his helmet, and Cerebro, and then like, oh yeah, I'm utilizing my powers now, and so it had that kind of effect because he's now trying to save the next family, and it made me kind of nostalgic, made me think maybe this is the last time we'll see it, like the last time we'll see this this weird eerie effect and visual cue. And it made me a little like, oh man, that's it. I think this might be one of the last ones, because he's not going to see too many murders, and we're running out of episodes there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of stuff happens in between, but let's skip to like the final 3 episodes. One of the episodes that struck me was I forget which one. It was probably one of the middle ones, but when Francis Dollarhide finds out where. Oh no! This is when Hannibal gives him the address, right? He gives him Will Graham's address, and then he goes after his family, which is kind of crazy. That was a very suspenseful sequence there, right? Where Molly grabs the son, and they just kind of sneak out, and they get away, but Dollarhide shoots her while she's driving, and you don't think she's gonna make it. But yeah, that was a very adrenaline-filled scene. Don't you agree?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's the first time you get to see the actual murder or possible murder played in real time.
Sure, yeah.
And then again, the stakes are high because this is his family that it represents like his safety net, right? His life that he's given up here, and if that gets taken away, then oh shit, again all is over. But it was great to see an escape, like a character outsmart the the almost unstoppable villain because Hannibal has been the unstoppable villain, and this guy seems unstoppable, even maybe scarier than Hannibal, because that was something that, and that was something I felt they did a good job at. Like, this guy had to seem more, I don't know, more supernatural, more insane, more a bigger threat than Hannibal, where Hannibal seemed like gentlemanly and refined and had a methodology. This guy didn't. He had one that was like aligned to the moon, right? That's like they were waiting for the next full moon. That was when he was going to strike again, and his motivations were more obscured, more ambiguous, and it made him a bigger threat. And then especially now that Hannibal's helping him, sending him after the family, then it's like, okay, now it's full blown. Now it's like, okay, really you basically trying to hit Will at the hardest here.
Yeah. And
then it's a great, again, a perfect way to kind of set things up. But I'm glad they got away. Like, that was nice because again, it was just it was rewarding to see, okay, a normal person could, by their wits and survival skill, and then kind of a heads up, she knew what she was kind of involved in, right? She's married to a former, now currently working FBI investigator.
Profiler.
You're gonna be put in the crosshairs, or
profiling serial killers too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was a cool scene, very intense. Yeah, very tense filled.
So yeah, you mentioned this, but yeah, the Richard Armitage, who plays Francis Dolarhyde, fantastic performance. He had to show that he's unstable, that he's losing his mind, and all the scenes where he's alone talking to the dragon, and growing a tail, or writhing in pain from what he thinks that is his transformation, right? All the scenes are just fantastic. But yeah, the way that he interacts with people too, you could just tell that this guy's just like a very sheltered, very introverted man who like is emasculated. There's something that happened to him, but he's emasculated. He doesn't take charge of life. He's just like this very meek individual. And the dragon like brings out the beast in it, brings out that masculinity, brings out his aggression, his assertion, him being assertive with Reba, right? His the female interest that he's that's in his life now, that he's we failed to mention that he works at a film processing lab, and she's blind, and all the scenes with her are great to characterize Francis Dolarhyde's gentler, more positive side, and that's all very fascinating stuff as well. But yeah, what do you think of that that characterization of I think he mentions it. Well, Reba mentions it, or no? He mentions it when he's like, yeah, he would have never been able to take her without the strength of the dragon, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a fascinating theme that a lot of serial killer movies play with, right? Like this fact that this monster brings out a way for a character like that to live, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me think of Edward Norton's Split and Fight Club, and how you create an alter ego. The alter ego is basically, he said, allows you to do things that your mind won't allow you to do because of your lack of confidence or self-esteem. But also then it's something that you can almost blame yourself, like the lack of accountability of saying, the dragging that allows me to do this, but I'm a weak man, or I'm going to self-flagellate myself or whatever. But I thought, it was a very searing portrayal of masculinity, or you can say like broken masculinity. Yeah. Because he does have this love interest that he's doing well with, that she's interested in him and confides in him, and he doesn't have to show anything. He's just a gentle guy that that listens to her,
Mhm.
you know, and that tries to see her, and she likes that, and doesn't pity her,
Yeah, yeah,
and she
yeah.
felt that's a great connection that he had. A lot of other, I will say, maybe, you know, more normal, more general people wouldn't have the ability to slow things down, take a look at, you know, listen to somebody deeply without vanity, you know, without superficiality, and that was the basis of this kind of love story. But then, you know, his break and all his issues, and like I said, he's losing his mind, and the dragon, you know, essentially maybe finding a way to take it away from him, right? Or maybe he's doing that himself, right? Sabotaging his own happiness, or maybe the fear of being able to connect to another human being, and then using the dragon as a way to ruin all that and take him out of it. So very compelling stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
very complex. You know, this guy became so complex where, and Hannibal was complex and Will was complex, but this guy, we didn't know, you know, where a lot of his stuff was coming from. And you know, he's you know, he's a broken, his mind is broken, so we're trying to see like fragments being put together, but it's so scattered, right? There's so many pieces that we're not quite sure how any of this can fit, and if he can be put together to be a normal guy. But he's already, you know, but we know he's already like murdered two families, and it's not something he's gonna just quit doing, you
Yeah.
know.
And I don't know if they
So
mentioned
that's
this.
very fascinating.
I don't know if they mentioned this in the text or in the. I don't know if they straight up say it, but um, the way that Dollarhide has been choosing his victims is very much like the book. Um, he's stalking, you know, all the film process that I guess that he develops. He's been watching them, right, and he's been kind of living their lives, and then he wants to be a part of their lives. So then he goes to kill them. um,
Mm.
so that's super chilling right there.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, indeed.
uh,
Yeah, very different motivations, right? A very
mhm.
different killer than Hannibal, and you kind of needed this whole other animal, right? Like if Hannibal was some sort of like refined animal, like a lion or something, you know, this other guy was just a beast, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, I don't know, like a hyena or something, or
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. I
something
was thinking of
else,
that
right?
too.
Like very unstable, like you
Yeah.
said, extremely unstable killer,
He's
a different kind of
becoming
predator.
the great red dragon.
Yeah, that guy, man, that guy, that's his voice was much better than say like Christian Bale playing Batman. I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a chilling voice that didn't seem like
Yeah.
he was suffering from laryngitis, but
Right.
actually somewhat menacing.
So, you know, yeah, throughout all this, Hannibal Lecter's been playing too. He's been, I think, at one point, Will Graham has a session with Dr. Du Maurier, and he's been telling her that, you know, he's been having visions of himself murdering his family in the manner of Dollarhide. He's a very empathetic character, right? He gets into the killer's head, and he has visions of doing the same. He applies it to his own life. And Du
What did you
Maurier.
think of Dollarhide and the museum visit?
Oh yeah, that was crazy. He almost catches him,
Yeah.
right? He pretty much eats that painting.
Yeah,
that was
and that was
crazy.
shocking to me. I think because you know it was like the original, and there's like only one of its kind.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you know, they treat it as if it was like gold, right? It's a
Right.
priceless, irreplaceable piece of human history.
yeah,
and
yeah.
then he
He just eats
not
it.
only did he start touching it, because it was like, to me, it reminded me of like fans with their albums or their
Oh, yeah,
perfect condition Michael Jordan cards or something. Don't touch it. Like you got, you know, like
Yeah.
destructive oils on your fingers or something, and then he
Yeah.
just like rubs
just
his
eats
face
it.
against it and he just eats it.
For me,
That
it's
was so
like,
chilling.
well,
Uh-huh.
it harkens and mirrors Hannibal Lecter's, and it's this like Roman Catholic notion of like you eat the flesh and you become that flesh, right? So the same thing with Hannibal, right? He eats these people to acquire their power, or maybe to, you know, revere them, or whatever he does, whatever his reasons are. But he does it, you know, there's a meaning behind it, right? And so what I saw from that is he's, you know, this is his full transformation. He's gonna become
Yeah.
the Red Dragon
Yeah.
with this, right? So
But it's eating a piece of artwork, though. You know what I mean? And that symbolizes a lot, but not as much as intimate as eating a human
Yeah,
being.
yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So we're getting into the last parts here. The season or episode 12. The number of the beast is 666. They come up with a plan to try to catch Dollarhide using Frederick Chilton and Freddie Lowndes. They know that they need to appeal to his perception of of himself through the world, through the lens of the media, right? And this is another thing a theme that I've seen as well in like Mindhunter. Like serial killers are very narcissistic. They always care about their image and how they're perceived by the public. So a genius idea of how to capture him. And this is a great scene where they take the jacket photo with him to show them where they are, and then like Will Graham puts his hand on Frederick Chilton. He's like, he's like, I think Jack Crawford says like, Frederick, would you like to be in the picture? And he's just like, one for the dust jacket. He's like, of course he wants to take a picture.
Line. Yeah. It was such an awkward scene to see. Like, we're like, why is he not like? Why are they not holding like being closer and hand on the shoulder? And I didn't understand the meaning later, but it was kind of chilling. Like,
he puts his hand on him.
Yeah.
And then like you can see like Frederick
Marco.
Almost like, oh, hello there, hello. He kind of likes it.
Completely oblivious to.
Right.
It's a very, very dark fate. You want to get into that.
To the dark machinations of of Will Graham and the FBI. So I believe this is where Dr. Lecter is. Wait, it says they're delivered to Dr. Lecter by Bloom, and Hannibal eats one of the lips. When did that happen? I forgot.
Say it again.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so they capture... Dollarhide captures Chilton, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like... Oh, man, this is chilling when he's like... trying to talk his way out of it, and there's no way he's getting out of this alive. And then, of course, we're like... No way Chilton's gonna die, because he dies every season,
Yeah.
He was... he had his organs taken out in season 1... Shot in the face in season 2. How is he gonna die in season 3?
Yeah.
And then he's burned nearly to death.
He gets his mouth. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, his mouth
off. Chewed off, and that was like a pretty horrific scene. But you can tell. Well, there's no like at that point. There's no condescending smile anymore. No grin, right? Like he's a burned up piece of corpse almost now, and that's kind of chilling because almost all the characters survive all sorts of maims and blows and gunshots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will got pushed off the train. He got sniped. I mean, they all seem like they're almost like superheroes themselves. Alana Bloom survived being pushed up 2-story home. Jack shot a knife in his neck, and then Chilton, like you said, dies in every season. So it was kind of sad to see that. That then he'd be confined to the wheelchair, and then that he was unrecognizable. And I think he was trying to communicate to Jack and Will in that one scene, but he didn't have his tongue, he didn't have his mouth, and I think Will had to kind of interpret for him what he was saying. It was just kind of filled with rage and just filled with pain.
This was in episode 13, the series finale, The Wrath of the Lamb, but before we get to it, because I do want to comment on that, it was not intentionally funny, but to me it was kind of funny. But okay, before that, we see Dollarhide kidnaps Reba and drives her off to his house. So that was pretty shocking. That's the way that episode ends. Wait, no, you're right. I think he does talk to Chilton at the end of the episode. So let me I just thought that the way it was kind of darkly humorous, the way he was interpreting, especially when he says, you set me up, and he's like, you put your hand on me like a pet. Just like the way Will Graham was just translating that like so matter-of-factly, like without any empathy. To me, it was just hilarious. I don't know if that was
man right there.
I don't know if that was intentionally supposed to be humorous, but I was laughing I don't know why I was laughing. I mean, it was supposed to be chilling because we're seeing Chilton like disfigured, burnt to a crisp, but the way Will interprets that, what he's saying,
I think really
funny.
Fans of the show found themselves laughing at a lot of scenes that are chilling, as a way of almost deflecting how uncomfortable or
Okay, yeah.
sadist
It could be a possibility.
scenes are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of they're all kind of broken. So like Will saying it that way was showing how little maybe humanity he had left in him after going through so much that he's gone through.
Yeah.
He didn't seem shocked at all.
Yeah. I mean, because they set him up.
Oh, yeah, but then the way I don't think he wanted to see them, the result look like that. And sometimes you don't want to see the consequences of you know what I mean, of such twisted actions.
So yeah, we get into the final episode, the series finale. Dollarhide takes Reba, and this is great the way he sets this up. We think that he's dead, right? He burns the house, and a great way. Again, this is just like the book as well. The way they describe it, the way she's describing it is like we think that he's dead, right? And then later he just sets up his own suicide. He stages his own suicide, pretty much, is what that whole scene was meant for, right? And
the shotgun
to the face, yeah. Apparently, do they reveal who that was? It could have been just anybody, right?
I think they did. It was like, I don't know, security guard or something, or somebody maybe who worked at the same place they did. I think he did capture somebody, or they did identify who it was.
They find out that it wasn't him, I guess, through some investigation, some DNA lab results. And Graham, I think, is ambushed in his motel room by Dollarhide, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You saw this most recently, so it's more fresh in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Will Graham suggests pretty much to use Lecter as bait because he knows how much Dollarhide reveres Dr. Lecter. Sees him he idolizes him pretty much, right? He's like the serial killer. And they pretty much stage a fake escape, right? They make it look like Dr. Lecter escapes. And
leaves a lot of bodies, a lot of more dead bodies in their trail.
Yeah, exactly. That was a cool way that they had to overturn the car that he was in, and like you said, a lot of people die. And then it sets everything up for they are Will and Hannibal end up in some house. Where's this at? Do you know?
Yeah, it was like on a cliffside at home, very, like a home built right on a cliff, very fancy looking. I'm not sure whose home it was, how they found it, but maybe that's where they thought they could lure him out. I think it was a good location because it would be out there on the outskirts of town.
Oh, right. So it's pretty much a place where the FBI set up, essentially. Yeah, so we get Hannibal and Will finally having a glass of wine together, and it seems like, they're reunited. Hannibal seems really happy. And then he gets shot by a sniper rifle, right? And Dollarhide seems to...
Yeah, like right before they announced that, they know that they acknowledge that they're probably being watched. That Dollarhide is just right out there, so it makes sense. You maimed the alpha, right? You may put him down so you can come in and then have your way. But it was that was a smart move by Lecter to kind of play possum a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So they mentioned that this is a cliffside house where Lecter had previously kept Abigail Hobbs and Miriam Lass as his captives. So it has a little bit of meaning for Hannibal Lecter, I guess. So yeah, this is the final sequence where, it seems that it could be the end for all of our characters again. But this happens like in every season finale, especially in season 2, right? And then so they have like a 3-way fight. I think Dollarhide stabs Will in the face, right?
I mean, everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay.
Leg, face. Yeah, it seemed like it was everywhere. Just throwing blows, throwing cuts, and everything.
Yeah, and then it's cool how it all, comes to a head, and they work together to finally overpower him and kill him, and then you see his, the red dragon again come out, and then the dragon is finally put down, right? And this is a great moment at the end, right, where they embrace each other. It seems like this is the end for them. And I think one of their final words was like, Hannibal says to Will, like, "Do you see? Like, do you finally see?" or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess he wanted to show him what it's like to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And Will says his final words are, "It's beautiful." And they are both pushed over the cliff, left to ambiguous fates. A great Sushi and the Banshees song at the end there. Very melancholy song to end such a poetic scene, right?
It was like one of the most erotic fight scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah.
and played to that way. It was.
Yeah.
I almost felt it was like a climactic scene for them as almost lovers.
As
like
lovers,
you're pushing on that theme of them being lovers, from being broken up to having to see each other again and to be intertwined in this dynamic relationship where it was love in a sense of like not of a sexual nature or even of a family nature, but of something else, like beyond our understanding, which really was like killers, right? Embracing each other, staring, being accepted by each other, and then so they always played it to great strength. This love dynamic, and Will being obviously Will being, I guess, maybe the more effeminate character, and Hannibal being the more dominant character. But that's what he wanted to do, right? Hannibal always loved wanting to try to put people in scenarios where they would kill.
Mm-hmm.
Will actually did that, right? He forced Chio to do that when he kind of set her up.
To
free her. She didn't want to because she was had to take care of this prisoner, and it felt full circle. And even that line, you see, it was the other, the Hobbs, the Abigail father. What's his name? First name?
I forget.
Okay, well, that character.
The Minnesota
that's,
Strike.
That's what he said, right? When he looked over at him and Will looked at him, he said, "See," this question mark, and
right.
that always eluded, right, viewers, right, to actually really know what that is. And so I guess it's that satisfaction of killing, like, hey, I'm a killer, you've killed me now. Do you see, like, do you see, like, what this is, like, that most people are going to be unfamiliar with unless they're sadistic killers themselves, or get turned in that way. But it was what a impactful, lovely scene. Like in terms of, it was kind of like a superhero fight scene too. Like seeing the two heroes, battling the beast together,
finally working
throwing
together,
blows, like working in tandem to take down like the Thanos-like character,
teaming up. Finally the final team up that we get to see them work together at last.
And totally unexpected, because I didn't know what was going to happen. We all suspected it was going to be a very dark, demise for Will. I just saw everything worked for him. But as far as that last moment, what I thought I saw was Will pushing them over. Off, right? Will throwing them. Will essentially trying to kill Hannibal, but then trying to kill himself too.
Let's talk about in our final thoughts. But Garrett Jacob Hobbs is the killer. Abigail Hobbs' father. A very almost sensual embrace that they go through. You can tell they're just kind of holding each other, looking at each other's eyes, and like you said, it's just almost like not a romantic love, although it could be construed that way as well. By a lot of it could be subjective.
I would say homoerotic.
Homoerotic. But to me, it's more like the definition of soulmates. It's so rare to find somebody that gets you, and they finally found that in each other. Hannibal probably did more manipulative acts to get him to that point, But Will's, he's always been kind of a different mind, and he finally has somebody that sees him for who he is, and doesn't judge him, obviously, and it's a very beautiful moment the way they just are thrown over together at the end, which leaves a lot for interpretation. Like you said, does Will push him over? Are they dead? Did they both commit suicide? Will they
and
go
write the
on?
credits too. Then like you said that great song cues, and then write the credits, and that's like the searing conclusion. Like I thought, wow, I thought it was so well done. I thought there wasn't stretched out to infinity to all this story, but it was just exactly the conclusion that you need to see. That the full arc, like just perfectly done, like with almost poetically, with no words or very minimal words, just showing you the actions, the emotion on their faces, and then that cut. I don't know. I love that. I love the brevity of it.
Fantastic. So cool. Let's wrap this up. We've been talking about this long enough. What are your final thoughts on the season as a whole and of the series?
Well, what did you think of the very last scene? The
the post-credit scene. Yeah. So,
what did you feel about that?
The stinger, as we call it now from
Yeah.
Marvel Studios movies, Dr. Dumaurier sitting at a table for three, with eating her own leg, cooked and prepared like pretty much Hannibal did to Gideon, right? So I mean, it's supposed to be a tease, right? Like, is she waiting for Will Graham and Dr. Lecter? Are they still alive? Or did she just cook her leg for nobody now? Is it all for naught? But I think it was supposed to be like a tease, like they're alive maybe, but it's up to the viewer. It's up to each individual subjective, perspective.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, what did you think?
Yeah, I didn't notice that it was a table set for three. For me, it was just more she was like the way Will Graham was like obsessed and also kind of enamored with Lecter, and she knew how badly he wanted to eat her, and at the end I think she was longing for his return. Like maybe she felt either he left her or she wasn't gonna see him again, and I felt the preparation of her leg was her invitation for. Because if he was watching her, or if he was going to seek her out again, this would be her way of inviting him back into her life, right? With something he could not refuse, part of her body, just as a way to pull him back in. And so I didn't think she looked sad. I don't think she was expecting him to come through, because I think she did it just as almost like a last resort, like a desperation move to show, a love letter, a final love letter to the Lecter and the kind of power he has.
That's interesting. I guess from a person who like wanted more episodes, even though like that's a perfect ending, like I'm very conflicted on whether I would want a season 4, because at the same time it ended perfectly. I don't know how they could top that, but at the same time for me, like I wanted more, and I guess my interpretation of that largely comes from the fact that I wanted more. You know what I mean? And especially seeing it at the time.
Wanting more means that like that they haven't overstayed their welcome, right?
No, for sure.
That the quality was still there, yeah. Because so many series I've watched over the years, they really dovetail in season 4 or 5 if they don't have a way to wrap things up. They don't have a full arc, right? They're like making up as they go. Dexter, Lost, Game of Thrones, you could argue, and it's horrible. It's horrible to see the landslide of quality.
The fall from grace.
Once they've gone off the track there. So as I guess to segue to my final thoughts, there was something beautiful about a 3-season
series.
Just that was inconsistent, and felt that it was going to be enough, like that dude wanting more because he did a big none well, never drops off. You know, it doesn't have to because they're given the they're almost given the license and the luxury to end things. Right nowadays, I think you're not given that. You're given more money so you can keep going, and I don't think a lot of people are wanting to walk away from those opportunities. Right. You get to indulge, you get to do massive scenes, you get to continue working with your friends, and who doesn't want to walk away from that, right? You get to be the star of the show. Essentially you get to be like the narcissist of like the serial killers are. Like you love the press, you love the attention, and you want to keep going, but it's really a massive disservice to the fans. When they start seeing that the quality has dropped, and I don't know, I don't think it's sustainable. Unless you have the the source material where that's already quality and that's guiding you, that makes sense. But to drag on these characters to do a disservice to the characters and to the fans by putting them in regurgitations of the same type of scenarios and not expanding them any further and just having them do the same procedural stuff. I mean, dude, I'd rather leave the table wanting more rather than feeling too full and then almost like guilty that I consumed too much and I should have stopped sooner. So I love that. I love that he was able to do that. But man, you got overall. I didn't know the backstory of the research that you've put in terms of reading the books, the source materials, knowing the production challenges and all that, and some of the decisions that they were given. But I could see it play out. But ultimately, it was everything was well taken care of, right? Like it, they respected everything. They respected the material. They respected the actors. They respected the fans. And look, and luckily they were given that at least that third season to complete things. And that would have been a travesty. Like you said, this is a niche show that they were wanting to let die, but this like kind of maybe morbid small fan base wanted something more, or a finale, at least a fitting finale. And I'm glad they got that, because it would have been a very massive travesty to have it in the second season. And that's it.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, final thoughts is just like great in the canon of TV. Not surprising that it came around I would say the golden era of TV when, man, quality of programming was almost at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're a huge fan of it, and I'm glad you liked it. I recommend it to you, and I'm really glad that you liked it. That's a great way to put it. How you said, it didn't leave you too full, or you didn't want more, because you didn't want to kind of almost spoil, what you had. As for me, I believe that is one of my favorite series of all time. When I first saw it, my expectations were super low. It was just like another movie adaptation to the small screen. There's nothing good that can come out of this, and it completely proved me wrong from the first episode. And so every subsequent episode and every subsequent season has been a blessing for me. Such a different series, like one of the most original kind of visions I've ever seen on TV, apart from Twin Peaks. Something just so oddball. So, I mean, it's not completely original because it's based on a novel, but the way they executed it is, very kind of surreal, very disturbing, very nightmarish. And the characters are just completely memorable. And I'm really glad I got to watch it both as it aired, and binging it now just gives me much more appreciation for it. And where I would go now, I said before, I'm really conflicted on whether I would want a season 4 because it ended so perfectly. However, okay, let me put it this way. I wouldn't want a season 4 if they did it right after season 3, because a lot can happen with that, right? The showrunner is tired. He doesn't have enough material. The actors are probably tired of playing the roles. So many things can happen, right? So many complications with the production. But now that they have like 5 years off, and And if they have this, like you said, if they have proper source material, if they have the rights to the Silence of the Lambs, oh my God, that'd be so fantastic. If they can adapt the Silence of the Lambs for season 4, with Brian Fuller's dream cast, he wanted Richard Armitage to play Francis Dollarhide, and he got it. And his dream cast to play Buffalo Bill, I believe, is Lee Pace. So that would be just tremendous to see. But I know they're having a lot of issues with the rights with MG is staying with MGM now, and it's very conflicted with the studio's relationship that they have with each other right now. So, but and it's fascinating to know that Brian Fuller's an openly gay man. I don't know if did you know that, Dad? Yeah, so it's really fascinating how he turned this into, instead of the ultimately a kind of romance between Clarice Starling and Hannibal, he turned it into this romance with Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter, which ultimately works for me and makes this even that much more distinguished of a series, because it does break a lot of barriers in that sense, and it just gives us something different. And I love the series. That's all I got to say about it.
Man, okay, that's interesting. Okay, I believe Ryan Murphy, behind American Horror Story and a lot. I believe he's openly gay. Mm-hmm. There's something about this goes back to Fight Club again. Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club,
gay as well, right?
Openly gay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's something about certain gay men who see into the role and the complexity of masculinity much deeper than maybe straight men do, because for them, it's something that they, I think, explore deeply for themselves, right, personally, and for their relationships and whatnot. So. I'm glad that he was able to expand on those kind of things that he had in his mind, in his writing, and in the characters. Now it better explains the semi-homoeroticism, but it's more of that like between two males, like also we see in Fight Club, like a deep, almost soulmate like scenario where they explore each other in every aspect of like the psyche of, like I said, traditional masculinity, death, changes, transformation. They're all very complex things. It's not played out often enough, I think. And so, for him to kind of use this as a vehicle to explore that, and it's like literally perfect, though, right? You have like complex killers and how they're, how chilling and how I don't know, challenging it is for them to, for people to understand that. And so. Very cool. Like, do you know if he's doing anything else? Like, is he going to be involved in future stuff?
Yes. Well, he did American Gods for a season and maybe two, but it didn't get picked up or something went wrong with it. I don't know if he's doing anything now, but going back to your point about like the gay perspective, the gay man perspective, we were talking about this earlier too in the Joel Schumacher podcast about how, they connect more, gay men, a gay man's perspective, they connect more with like the disenfranchised, right? Like the people who are on the outskirts of society, who are like nobody gets them. And, and he applied this to Will Graham, right? And to Hannibal Lecter, and to great effect. I mean, we almost, we not only empathized with Hannibal, we like wanted to be him. We talked about this last time about like, how his wardrobe and how he's so refined and cultured, like it's almost something that we we strive for, and he made that, he made us the most a serial killer who eats people. He made that character compelling and relatable, and I don't know anybody else that could do that. And it was really great.
Yeah, it's really like a deeper dissection of just the role or the ideal of man, of living and breathing as a man, right? Just the mindset of it. And they go, they just take a deeper dive into it, and then the wrestling with like the challenges of two different men and how they relate to each other, right? Like kind of constantly in battle. There's a competitiveness. There's a love there. There's like a lot of different themes going on, and it just explored so well. But like you said, I think part of being a traditional well, a traditional attractive man, like is, like let's take another guy, James Bond, right? Like he's written though more in a much more conventional way, but worldly, refined, great taste, super masculine. Essentially the same kind of very attractive features, but but they have that being counterplayed by the Will Graham character, and then I think to even greater effect the Red Dragon character. I found that extremely fascinating because all the conflict was like within himself, constantly played out all the time. But again with an inner demon or alter ego, and I think that's interesting. It's played out in cinema. I think more often than we take notice of, but not so effectively. And when it's used for like plot element and to create memorable characters, it's like even better.
Do you think? Obviously, I know you love Mads Mikkelsen, but from now on, when you hear the name of the character of Hannibal Lecter, will you associate it more with Mads Mikkelsen rather than Anthony Hopkins?
Well, right now, yes.
Yeah,
but I still think what I think Mads Mikkelsen. I still think Le Chiffre, because that's like one of the first times I've seen him. Playing that debonair Bond villain, and he plays that really. He's kind of perfect for that kind of role as well. And that always will stay with me as him being that guy, like this great counterpart to Bond in Casino Royale, right? Okay. And I just saw Casino Royale maybe a couple months ago. He's so good in it, so memorable, and also was kind of like I think he was also kind of like ambiguous. His sexuality was somewhat ambiguous too, because I think he was attracted to James Bond, okay. And James Bond kind of teased him, and that was kind of an interesting back and forth between your hero and your villain character. Played out here as well.
Which one do you prefer?
What's that?
Which Hannibal Lecter do you prefer?
I gotta see Silence of the Lambs again. I know it's on Netflix. I saw the little scene, little snippet of that scene with him and Jodie Foster, the memorable one. And see him young again, see him so full of fire. I forget if I think of Hopkins now, I just think of he was in Transformers, man. Yeah. I'm like, God, I don't know if I can take this old guy seriously, other than being some kind of grandpa character. When you go back to Silence of the Lambs '91, you're like, holy shit, this guy was he could have been around his peak time, it could have been the Brando era, of his acting career. So I'm like, oof, I gotta just see how they play both characters again. But you don't want to sort of follow in the footsteps of Hopkins. Well, he played him in 3 movies, correct? You said 3? It was Hannibal and in Red Dragon?
Yeah, that's right. Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, and Red Dragon, yep.
Okay, yeah, I gotta see him in those other 2 movies too to really truly compare.
You haven't seen Hannibal or Silence of the Lambs at all?
I've seen all 3. Hannibal is the one that's most very, very unclear. Okay. I don't recall main things. I'm conflating that movie with Red Dragon.
Okay.
Red Dragon's a little bit more clear to me.
Don't watch it Don't watch it very too soon, but when you do, try to. It's impossible not to compare now, but yeah, I don't know. For me, Anthony Hopkins seems just too straightforward as a villain. I don't want to say mustache twirling, but he's not as much depth, obviously, as Mads Mikkelsen. And for me, because obviously I've seen the Hannibal series a lot more as well, I just relate Mads Mikkelsen to that character now. He's permanently my Hannibal Lecter. In my head.
Totally. I mean, for some, it's the other comparison I want to make is maybe the difference between Heath Ledger and Nicholson playing Joker. And let's say now go Joaquin, right? So some people might think, oh, dude, after I've seen Joaquin, there's no other Joker. He's the best. Where a lot of people may still feel Heath Ledger was the most chilling and the most interesting. But I think they all bring something different. I mean, Nicholson kind of brought that gentlemanly clown character, also kind of scary, where Heath Ledger was, the anarchist kind of Joker. So, I hope in our lifetime we get to see this Hannibal Lecter character played again by another actor. And to great effect. I mean, it's what is it was a gift to be able to see Mads Mikkelsen play him, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully the next adaptation or something. Like maybe someone gets the rights to Silence of the Lambs, and then they bring in a new person to play him.
That would be fantastic because I
yeah.
know that the entire cast is on board. They're ready to go. They have great relationships with Brian Fuller and the producers Martha De Laurentiis and the De Laurentiis company, and they still have the rights to Hannibal and Red Dragon. So it's only a matter of time now that all of the seasons have dropped on Netflix. It's getting a lot more attention and press again. Everyone had been asking, Brian Fuller that question after the series 3 finale aired, and they've been, taking a break from it for a while. But now that it dropped on Netflix, they're asking it again. They're like, "Hey, will there be a season 4?" And Brian Fuller has not, adamantly denied it, but at the same time, nothing's set in stone, nothing's in motion. But I would love to see it if it's they got the rights to Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
But regardless, I'll watch it anyway. It might not
well,
be as
of course,
good.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a massive treat. I mean, we've seen Stranger Things. I mean, I always think about Serenity capping off Firefly. The theatrical movie made, I think, because fans were, it seems unheard of even now when I say it, right? Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, Firefly and Serenity.
Yeah.
Joss
I think
Whedon.
one season canceled on Fox, and then fans going crazy over this was Brad Bird, right? No, Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon's thing, and then they're able to get the enough studio pressure to make a movie. And I remember seeing I saw Serenity before I even saw Firefly, and I thought it was interesting. I thought it was good. And then got to go back and see that Nathan Fillion led cast of Gina Torres, or I think I mentioned earlier. But so we'll see. What about that? What about theatrical?
They mentioned that they wanted to do that, but I'm not on board with that. I mean, look at Entourage, but I know that's an unfair comparison.
I think
But
well,
it needs time to breathe. We're so used to the series format with Hannibal. But the better comparison is Twin Peaks. I mean, that was canceled after 2 seasons abruptly. That final episode of season 2 was a huge cliffhanger, and it got canceled. I mean, they made a movie out of that, which is not. It was a prequel movie, so it wasn't that great. But then 25 years later, we got The Return, and it wasn't fan servicey. It wasn't, by the numbers, another Twin Peaks where it's checking in on these characters again. It was a completely different thing. It was almost groundbreaking for me to see that. And, we live in a different time now. Another comparison would be Lucifer. I haven't seen that series myself, but it got canceled on Fox, I believe. And then when it got back, when they, it dropped on Netflix, it got enough traction to get another season on Netflix. So, nothing is ever really canceled these days.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'm glad that's a great reference there to acknowledge Twin Peaks.
Sure.
Because I don't want 25 years is a long time, but
I wouldn't wait 25 years for Hannibal, but
if you get to see this stuff again, if the creators come back and they get some of the cast back and they get to do a new vision of a new source material that they have, or some source material they have, obviously I'd totally be on board.
They may be even deliberately waiting to have the actor's age. Maybe he wants to have Hannibal Lecter, Mads Mikkelsen, play even more refined, older gentlemen. Who knows?
Sure. I mean, dude, if they had him again, if they're giving the green light, I'm sure Fuller would put everything into it, to make it just as good as, because I'm sure he's making it for himself too, and for the fans of the books, doing it justice. And then, you already have the cast, you already have the great, that's what really made that show. And I also thought, and then I know you're telling me he had certain people in mind, he wanted Richard Armitage, and he got him. And when you bring up Lee Pace, I'm like, that's a very, unconventional pick. Oh, okay. He's not I need, top caliber these guys, A-list these guys, like
Yeah.
very specific character actors, you know, for very specific type of for roles that he sees. So he's pretty good at that. I mean, I would say, you know, I'm hoping he probably had it. I'm sure he had a hand probably getting like Michael Pitt, and because I think he's a terrific actor in it, you know, and all the side characters that he's chosen. There's almost nobody that's unlikable. Like they're played to be unlikable, but they're likable because they're charming and good actors.
Yeah.
You know, in that whole show.
Richard Armitage and Lee Pace are also openly gay, so maybe they're, you know, they have a community, and he just wanted them. He wanted, you know,
man.
the openly gay actors to play the notorious serial killers for some reason. I don't know. But,
Even better.
yeah, right.
But they're all good actors.
Sure. But cool, man. We've talked about this enough. I think we should end the show here. Thank you again for joining me and talking about this. Is long overdue. I needed to talk about this for 5 years, and I'm glad you gave me humored me and gave me the opportunity for that. I'm glad you finally got around to watching it. I'm glad it's on Netflix right now, so a lot more people can watch it. So
Yeah.
so thank you again, Dad. Cool, guys.
My pleasure.
So that's the end of our show. You could always check out more episodes at thelazerboy.wordpress.com and find us on Instagram at thelazerboy. And thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see